FICFI, Sci-Fi Alien Commander Story? Human, I beg you to inspect my body, the beautiful alien commanders demand. She walked out of the quiet ship bay with the still grace of a storm at sea. Her skin was pale silver in the hangar lights, and her long hair fell like a ribbon of night. She was not human yet. She looked close to human in a way that felt strange and kin. Air smelled of oil and ion burn and old dust from the base floor. On the wall, the flag hung soft and thin, and the stars outside. The open blast doors were sharp like ice. Mara stood there with her toolkit, and her steady hands and her soft voice worked. Nights on the base, and she liked the quiet times when it was only her and the hum of machines. She'd seen much of war and much of loss in the last few years, kept her heart guarded, but she did not let it harden. She believed that humans were made to survive and rise and protect each other. When the alien ship arrived, most of the base locked down. It did not fire a shot, and it asked for parley in clear speech. Parley voice said they needed a human engineer, not a soldier. It said they needed honest eyes and good hands. Mara went because she understood machines, and because she did not run from fear. She entered the ship and found the commander waiting. The commander was tall and calm, and her eyes had a soft glow like the sky at dawn. She wore a layered suit of living metal that breathed and healed. Her name sounded like wind over glass, so the crew wrote it down as Elin, and that was close enough. Lone bowed with slow grace and spokes, said she had come to ask for help, and that the request might seem strange. He said she would risk insult to save her people, and hers were not human, but they were not. Inimus. Mara held the toolkit to her chest and gave a small nod, asked what was needed, though she did not ask with a question mark. She only let the words rise like a plain Hillalon, placed a hand over her own chest, and breathed. Inch said her body held a system that was failing. She said she was the ship, and the ship was her. And if she failed, her fleet would fail, and a war would spill out into human space. She said she trusted the human rumor that human hands could fix what others would not see. She said she trusted the stories that humans could look at a ruin and see a home. Mara felt her ribs tighten, then loosen. She thought of the crater outside town and the hospital wing that her neighbors had built with scrap and promise. Thought of her mother, who used to fix old radios with a butter knife and a smiles, told Elin that she would try. Elin nodded and said that she would accept an inspection of her body. Said she would accept it as a commander who put duty first, and as a woman who wished to live. Mara kept her voice even and said they would proceed with care and respect. She asked for a clean room and light and a way to read the living metal lead her through a corridor that breathed like a sleeping Walith. Ship walls pulsed with soft waves of Bloomra. Ran her fingers near the surface and felt a sigh of ions, as if she had skimmed a lake at dusk. They came to a chamber with a low table made of braided light, lay upon it with her hair pooling like a dark river and her hands resting at her side. Samara washed her hands and set out tools that were half human and half adapted from the ship. Supplish worked slow and warm. She spoke each step aloud, so Elon would know what came next. He said she would listen first. She leaned close and placed her ear near the living metal suit and near the skin that was not human. Heard a thin rattle like wind, and dry Lavesh felt for the rhythm and found it was broken in places like a drum that had lost. Some skins traced the lines of the suit and found a seam. It was not a seam. She pressed her palm, and the suit opened like petals to show a map of light under skin. Elin breathed in sharp, then let it out slow, did not try. That honesty helped Mara hold steady. Mara saw a web of nodes like small stars and a river of current that fed Themanon. Of the rivers had a dark bend where light pooled too thick. Then Dija said there was a block and she would try to reroute flow, so the ship heart would not starve. Ellen said she trusted Mara and that the pain would be worth the help. Mara set the smallest probe. She had and used a human trick she learned in a garage at age 10. If a path is blocked, then use the gap between what the maker planned and what the world gave. Yush found the gap and slipped a thin bridge of carbon. Nanowire grown by the ships hummed a soft tune from home to keep rhythm. She watched the light map shift as the current sought the new wave. Dark bend began to thin like smoke in a morning breeze and shook as the feedback rolled. Through her frame and across the ship outside in the hangar, a bank of panels blinked and then steadied in. The control post, a young tech named Zoe, saw the ship. Heat dropped back to safe level. Mara held Elon's hand and told her to breathe and count slowly, and counted in a voice like rain on copperth rattle in her chest. Softened Mara checked more lines and found other small flaws, not sabotage, not decay, but the scar of long travel and hard choices in a storm near a blue giant that had torn at her system. She worked for hours, or maybe it was less time since. The ship light had a way of smoothing the clocks, refused to harm in the name of speed, and she refused to guess when she could learn. Asked for ship schematics, and the ship answered, not with words, but with shapes in the air that she could touch and move. Learned the way their tech grew in layers like bone, and how it sang to itself to self-heals, learned where human logic could see a better path, because humans loved shortcuts that made a road where none existed. Made 3 more small bridges and eased a swelling around a node that pulsed. A Harge found a hidden cache of stress signals in a place near the heart link, and she sang to it with a tool that made gentle waves, and the signals loosened like tight hands. Opening lay very still and watched Mara with eyes that held awe and fear and growing. Kamshi had come to a small human base with a request that her own crew had called unwise-ish, had bet on the rumor of human spirit. Watched that rumor take shape in the work of a woman with a toolbox and a quiet smile when the last bridge fused. And the suit sealed with a soft hush, the chamber went quiet in a full waith rattle, was Ganetha. Drumbeat true, and deep. Mara sat back and rolled her stiff shoulders. Sat up slow, and then Stutch looked taller, now not in inches, but in resolves. Bowed her head to Mara and spoke, said the pain was gone, and the fear had eased, said the ship listened once more, and the fleet waited for her. Word. Mara nodded, and said the fix would need rest and care for. A dash said the new bridges were strong, but still. Young Gillen smiled in a way that made her seem very young and very old. At one Shesh asked how she might honor the help. Mara glanced at the hangar where soldiers watched through glass with hands tense at their weapons. Said honor could be a truce that lasted long enough to talk. Said honor could be knowledge shared, so there would be fewer wounds to Mendelin. Turn this over with the weight of a leader who had carried many stones. Said she would send a signal to the fleet to hold and to open a corridor for words. Instead of fire, said she would grant human ships safe passage through the drift that only her people knew. Welsh said she would teach the math that let their drives slide between the sharp edges of gravity without tearing. Mara felt a heat rise in her chest that was not fear and not grief. It was pride, and it was the old human spark that made cities from mud and light from wires. Said she would accept, and she would ask her base to accept. She said she would stay as liaison while the fix settled, and the trust grew. Aelin nodded and offered a hand. Mara took it and felt the faint hum of the living suit under warm skin. There was a tremor through the ship, then a calm reply as the fleet received the ordering. The control post. Zoe saw the hostile tags on the board fade to gray. Hold status commander of the base. A woman named Claire let out a breath like a soft laugh. She told the watch to stand down, and she told the cooks to make fresh bread for guests. Word spread fast because humans carry good news the same way they carry warnings. Mara walked with Elon back to the hangar, where the open doors showed the pale curve of the moon and the thin line of dawn over. Elon asked for a tour of the base, and Mara agreed. Thea walked by the machine shop where Lauren and Paige filed new teeth for a gear taken from a farm windmill that now turned an air pump. Thea paused by the memorial wall where names were written in chalk so they could be updated as more lost came home or were found. Alavelin traced the chalk letters with a gentle finger and said a quiet word that meant we hold you in the light in her lingua gamara. Watched and understood that grief was a bridge. Toothy reached the mess hall and ate soup that tasted of parsley, and Hapith crew stared at first, then eased as they saw their commander at Izana. Brought a tray and asked if the guests liked the bredolin, smiled and said yes, and her face looked less like a mask and more like a person who could laugh. Let her. They returned to the ship for final checks. Mara ran diagnostics and saw the light map hold steady and bright. Set small dampers to catch any shock from jumps, left a human note inside. The suit code that said breathe steady, count to 8, then run the long. Pathsh knew that code would be found and read and maybe copied, and she welcomed Thatch believed that gifts grew when Cheridellen stood at the center of the chamber and called to her crew with a thought that echoed like a belth. Crew arrived in silence and took in the sight of their commander standing, strong and calms.